Fordham? Is that you? You look like something a cat spat up.
Hello, Giles. It's lovely to see you too.
What brings you round the jail? I thought you'd quit being a detective.
I'm looking to speak with Mr. Albert Martin.
Oh, I see. Well, that's him in the first cell there. I'd say what needs saying as quick as you can, though. He's headed for the gallows in the morning.
What? Already? But what about a trial?
No trial necessary when there's black magic involved. This little half-breed's already sealed his fate.
Such a charming fellow, isn't he? I bet that's a direct line to the police department. You should make a rude noise into it when Giles isn't paying attention. Either crime is low, or the police aren't doing their jobs very well. Not much in the way of comfort. No bed or even a bucket. It's a good thing this place is meant for short stays. He's watching you like a hawk. Looks liable to toss you in one of his cells if you try any funny business.
Mr. Martin?
Who are you? My lawyer?
No, I'm actually here to help you. The name's Miles Fordham. I'm a private investigator.
How are you going to help me?
I'm looking into the attack on Madame Dupre. I believe you're innocent.
Oh, thank heaven. That's music to my ears.
Would you mind answering a few questions for me?
Friend, if it means saving me from the noose, I'll tell you nothing less than God's truth.
Interesting choice of phrase for someone accused of using black magic.
What can you tell me about Madame Dupre?
What's to tell? She's a twisted, evil woman who got what was coming to her. Whoever attacked her deserves some sort of reward for the service they're doing the community.
So it wasn't you then?
No, I'm innocent, Mr. Fordham. You have to believe me.
I'm afraid you're not making that very easy right now, Mr. Martin. Do you know anything about the circumstances of Madame Dupre's supposed death?
No, I had nothing to do with it.
Then why did her son accuse you?
Probably because he's just as ignorant as she is.
What I meant was, how did her son know to accuse you? Have you had any contact with the family before?
Yes, you could say that.
Uh-oh. That gleam in his eye says it all.
You see, I'm involved with Dupre's daughter, Juliet Montgomery. Dupre doesn't like that one bit. She even threatened me once.
Is that right?
Yes. She might have everyone else fooled, but that woman is the devil incarnate. I can't understand how something so heartless and cruel could have spawned someone as pure and, loving as my dear Juliet.
He's not really helping his case much, is he?
Tell me about Juliet.
She's wonderful. Such a beautiful, kind soul. She hasn't come to see me yet, but I'm sure that's because of all the confusion in the last few days. Juliet wouldn't believe for a second that I would be capable of harming her mother. I'm sure of it.
How did you two get involved?
We met at the university.
Your classmates?
Hardly. They wouldn't allow someone like me to enroll there. Juliet studies botany. I work as an assistant in the greenhouse. We started talking, and she actually treated me like a person. To everyone else, I was just the boy who fetched the test tubes. But Juliet actually wanted to hear what I had to say, had the same taste in books and art. Didn't just treat me like some piece of gardening equipment. She even shared some of her notes with me after I told her I was interested in botany as well. From there, things just got better. I don't expect you to understand or approve, but that's how it happened.
Oh, you'd be surprised. It doesn't sound too different to how my wife and I got together. Except I was a detective and she was a singer at a bar.
And she's...
Yes, Mr. Martin. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. How often is Juliet in the greenhouse?
Every weekday, but I doubt she's there now. She's probably trying to find out where I am and working to have me released.
Somehow, I wouldn't bet on that.
How did you end up in here?
I was just minding my own business at home when the police showed up with no warning. They made some outrageous claims about me putting some sort of curse on Madame Dupre. The next thing I knew, I was here. Oh, Mama must be beside herself with worry. I just hope she's all right.
What does your mother do, Mr. Martin?
She helps people.
I was hoping you'd be just a bit more specific.
She provides spiritual help to those who seek guidance.
She's a spiritualist.
Not quite. She's more like... how can I explain it? You know how a priest holds mass to spread the word of God to the people? My mother holds services and calls on the spirits to walk among us, providing healing and guidance.
So she's a religious leader?
If you want to give her that title, it would be the most appropriate.
And does this religion of yours have a name?
You'd probably know it as voodoo, but it doesn't mean what you think it does. People are so quick to judge and portray us as evil when they have no idea.
So you practice voodoo, do you?
Are you making fun of me, Mr. Fordham?
No, of course not. Apologies if it seemed as though I was. It's just that the police are convinced that black magic was involved in Madame Dupre's apparent death.
That's because that idiot son of hers knew about my mother, and like all bigoted fools, assumed that we're involved in devil worship and the black arts. But I can assure you that this is most certainly not the case, Mr. Fordham.
Of course, I didn't mean to imply.
Just forget it.
That's all for now.
Oh, wait, before you go, would you do me a favor? Would you go see my mother at our house and give her a message?
You're at 451 Compton Street, right?
Yes, that's right. Could you tell her I said St. Roch's dog is barking?
I suppose I could do that, yes.
Oh, thank you.
Whatever happened to a simple I love you? Compton Street. We're not too far from Restaurant Row. When's the last time you ate, anyway?
Please, let's not add eating to the list of things to nag me about.
Bonbon's Restaurant. I never got a chance to go there, but I hear their deviled eggs are simply to die for. Considering how many eating establishments are in this neighborhood, the butcher picked a fantastic spot to set up shop. I do notice a distinct lack of stray cats in this neighborhood, though. One of Atwood's re-election posters, sorely lacking a mustache. Go on, Miles. Fix this grievous injustice.
Not now, Bill. There are more important things to worry about.
Spoil sport. I'm glad that Coulson still uses horses. I don't trust the new self-driving cabs.
I'm sorry, I have no time for visitors today.
You're Albert Martin's mother, aren't you?
Who are you?
Miles Fordham. I spoke with Albert, and he told me to give you a message. He said to tell you that St. Roch's dog is barking.
Oh, I see. That's good. That's very good. You better come in, Mr. Fordham. Standing on the street just won't do. Welcome to my home, Mr. Fordham. I am Sabine Martin. I hope you understand that Albert has nothing to do with this awful business. Would you care for some tea?
Well, her tune certainly changed when you gave her that message. I wonder what it meant.
No, thank you, ma'am. I won't be staying long.
The Virgin Mary? I must admit she was the last person I was expecting to see in here. A rather unremarkable book collection, I'm sorry to say. That statue, on the other hand, gives me the willies. That pattern resembles a flower. Too bad it isn't an Easter lily. For all we know, that rider is some sort of demon. He looks like he's having a good time, at least. It's some old man with a dog standing at the center of a crossroads. If that's meant to have any sort of significance, it's completely lost on me.
I'm afraid that room is private, Mr. Fordham. I must respectfully ask you to not go in there.
Of course. My apologies. I've got a few questions for you, Mrs. Martin.
I'll try to answer them the best I can.
Do you think your son is capable of doing what he stands accused of?
Never. Albert wouldn't harm a fly.
That's what the mothers always say.
Why don't you tell me a bit more about him then?
He started working at the university laboratory a few years ago. I was so proud of him. The university is quite selective, you know. The same for its staff as well as its students.
Yes, I've gotten that impression.
I always told Albert to be careful around those high society types, but that one always thinks with his heart first.
Is she sure that's the correct body part?
He's all the family I have, Mr. Fordham.
What do you know about Juliet, Madame Dupre's daughter?
I know Albert was smitten with her, no matter that I told him to be very careful around her kind. Those rich Creole families don't care much for people like us. To them, we're just a help. But from his telling, Juliet sounded to be a decent soul. It's a shame the same can't be said for her kin.
Do you know anything about Madame Laura Dupre?
I never met her in person, but I know plenty about her.
Like what?
Nothing fit for polite conversation, Mr. Fordham. But I can tell you this. Laura Dupre has far more enemies than she lets on.
Does that include you or your son?
It most certainly does not.
What exactly is it you do, Mrs. Martin?
I provide services to the public.
A delightfully vague answer if there ever was one. Give me something a bit more specific, please.
I'm a Mambo Asugwe. That means I'm what you call a voodoo queen. I'd give you a detailed explanation of the responsibilities and duties of the role, but your time would be better spent clearing my son's name.
Can you tell me a bit more about your religious practices?
What I can tell you is that the ignorant whites in this city are afraid of us for no reason. Voodoo is not about black magic or dark spells or turning people into the living dead. It's about healing and life. Naturally, there are misguided souls who may try to use it for ill purposes, but I am not one of those.
Sounds like you hit a sore spot. Might be a good idea to stop pressing her on this angle.
If you'll indulge my curiosity, what exactly was the meaning of Albert's message?
Saint Roch is the patron saint of dogs, as well as the falsely accused. If he sent the message along with you, it means he trusts you, and that I should too.
Oh, I see.
Perhaps you were hoping for something more? That's just the way of mysteries, isn't it?
How do you mean?
The thrill of the unknown is always more exciting than the truth. Mystery makes life a little more interesting.
True, but if mysteries were really better unsolved, I wouldn't have a job. I think I'll take you up on your offer for tea, after all.
All right, Mr. Fordham. You'll have to give me a few minutes to heat up the kettle. I'll be back shortly.
Amazing! Even more voodoo stuff back there. Why would she keep these particular items hidden from view?
Good question.
They obviously have some importance to her. I'd suggest asking, but I don't know if that's the best idea given how sensitive she seems to be about the subject.
The tea should be ready in a few minutes, Mr. Fordham. You can help yourself once it's done.
You're very kind, Mrs. Martin. I've got a few questions for you, Mrs. Martin.
I'll try to answer them the best I can.
About that back room of yours.
I beg your pardon?
I don't know about this, Miles. Is this really a road you want to go down?
Actually, never mind. I misspoke. Thank you for your help.
My pleasure.
Interesting. Those pots look as though they've been wrapped in tobacco leaves.
Aren't you going to have your tea, Mr. Fordham?
I'm afraid I just remembered something important I need to look into. Perhaps later.
Suit yourself.
Huh. It's as though we've journeyed to the tropics. I don't know how you can stand to keep that coat on in here. Quite the assortment of plants they keep in here. I wonder if they serve any purpose or are just meant to look pretty. Those flowers are definitely not native to this area. They seem to be thriving in their glass tubes, though. Judging from that pipe, that contraption must be used to keep the plants hydrated. It looks like a giant earwax remover to me. I've never seen a flower grow that big. What do you suppose they're feeding them? One of those cute little Japanese trees that are all the rage these days. Personally, I don't see how giving a tree a haircut is meant to be relaxing.
Pardon the disturbance, but are you Juliet Montgomery?
I am. And you are?
Miles Fordham. I'm a private investigator looking into the events surrounding your mother's attempted murder.
Ah, of course.
Have you got time to answer some questions?
Yes, that shouldn't be a problem.
Do you know anything about the events leading up to your mother's premature interment?
No, it was a complete shock. Mother seemed to be perfectly healthy and full of life. Then, without warning, she was dead. Or so we thought.
I take it you were glad to be wrong?
What a ridiculous question. Of course I was. What sort of heartless beast would celebrate their mother's death?
Oh, I could name a few. Juliet definitely didn't shed any tears over Madame Dupre, though. That much is obvious.
Miss Montgomery, you don't have to lie to me. I'm not going to assume you tried killing your mother just because you weren't upset by her death.
I felt terrible about it. You have to understand, I didn't want her to be dead. I just felt a sense of relief. Please, don't think me a horrible person, Mr. Fordham. It's just that Mother and I aren't currently on the best of terms.
Why don't you and your mother get along?
We've never completely seen eye to eye on anything. She always disapproved of anything I did. When I was younger, she used to forbid me from speaking to the servants. I saw no harm in a kind word or smile, but she warned us that if we were too familiar, they would take liberties. Then when I declared my intentions to pursue academic studies, she really went livid. In her opinion, a university education was tantamount to a chastity belt. What sort of man would want a wife with a head full of useless facts, she'd say.
Personally, I've always found intelligence to be quite attractive.
I assume your mother didn't approve of your involvement with Mr. Martin?
A rather forward question, Mr. Fordham. But you're not mistaken. I'm not sure how she managed to find out about Albert and me, but when she did, she nearly had a conniption. As I'm sure you can understand, the situation at home has been less than perfect in the last few months. I'd really rather not dwell on it.
You mentioned you were friends with the servants.
Yes, that's right. I didn't care that they worked for us. Everyone needs a friend.
Did your mother ever mistreat them?
Mistreat? No, I wouldn't say so. She was always very stern, though, and quite cold. If they ever shirked their duties or misbehaved, they were punished, of course, but nothing out of the ordinary that I ever saw. Most of the servants are my friends, but I'm closest with Amelie, the kitchen maid. Mother wasn't too happy about that. Amelie's been around as long as I can remember. She's like the aunt I never had.
What can you tell me about Albert Martin?
I'm not quite sure where to begin.
Why not start by telling me what your relationship with him was?
We met here at the greenhouse. He was working as an assistant, sweeping and cleaning and fetching things for the students. My focus was on academics, naturally. I wasn't too interested in romance. In fact, I've had to turn away nearly every single one of my classmates. But with Albert, I found myself intrigued. I noticed him stealing glances, lingering just a bit too long after bringing over a book or flask, sweeping the same patch of floor near me over and over again. It wasn't too long before I had him bringing me tools and equipment, regularly.
I see.
As I mentioned, Mother was an absolute terror when she found out.
Do you believe Mr. Martin did what he stands accused of?
I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't seem like him, but Albert can be quite passionate. If the police believe he's to blame, then they must have a reason for it. It wasn't any secret that he hated Mother. Perhaps I should have ended things sooner. It was satisfying to know that Mother was displeased, but I never imagined it would lead to something like this.
Well, it's nice to see she's all heart.
So, you study botany. Fascinating subject.
Are you an admirer of plants, Mr. Fordham?
My wife has the green thumb in the household, but I do have a certain appreciation for them.
Plants are amazing things, just like people in many ways.
How do you mean?
They need attention and care. Ignore a plant, and it will wither. Give it too much attention, and it will become sick. Plants have many things to teach us, and I greatly enjoy learning from them.
These plants are impressive. Are they yours?
Yes, I've developed a method to make them extra healthy and strong.
They're larger than anything I've ever seen. How do you do it?
But I can't reveal my secrets, Mr. Fordham. The world will hear about my discoveries soon enough.
Incidentally, do you know anything about Easter lilies?
No, I don't keep or grow those here.
No more questions for now.
Then if you don't mind, I have work to do.
You are aware this is private property, sir?
Yes, I'm Miles Fordham, private investigator. I'm looking into the incident involving Madame Dupre. I assume this is she?
You assume correctly, Mr. Fordham. My apologies, but I thought the police had already made an arrest.
That's right, but there's still some doubt as to the man's guilt. May I ask your name, sir?
I am Dr. Fellows, Madame Dupre's private physician. I'm afraid she is in no state to be answering questions at present.
Are any other members of the family home?
Her son, Mr. Montgomery, is in the entrance hall. I had to give him a mild sedative to settle his nerves, but he should be all right to converse.
Then if you don't mind, I'll have a look around.
Her eyes are glazed over and she's got a vacant, expressionless stare. She seems completely oblivious to her surroundings. If we didn't know she'd been buried alive, I'd say she was just exhibiting the typical symptoms of your average rich person. This fountain probably looked nicer when it was working, but right now it's just a breeding ground for mosquitoes. With her vast sums of wealth, Madame Dupre could probably feed a starving family for the next 30 years. Instead, she uses the money to keep her hedges trimmed.
Doctor, may I ask you a few questions?
Please be my guest.
Tell me about Madame Dupre.
She is a great woman and a pillar of the community. I cannot imagine why something like this could happen to her, or how someone could be capable of such a barbaric feat. Though this ordeal has been terrible, I am confident she will overcome. The power of her physical constitution is surpassed only by her strength of character.
You think he'd say the same things if he wasn't on her payroll? I highly doubt it.
What were the circumstances surrounding Madame Dupre's supposed death?
Her son, Andrew, sent for me a few days ago after finding her unconscious and unresponsive. As I was unable to detect a pulse or breath, I had no other recourse but to declare her deceased. I judged that Madame Dupre had likely suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. It was most shocking to be proven wrong at a funeral.
I can imagine. Where was the funeral held, by the way?
St. Denis Cemetery. Madame Dupre wished to be interred in the tomb of her father's family, name of Chesterton.
Perhaps I'll go have a look. How long have you been Madame Dupre's private physician?
5 years, and I've been practicing medicine for the past 30. I still spend a couple of days a week treating patients at Riverview Asylum.
Oh, good. Maybe if you're lucky, he could be your doctor someday.
30 years is quite a long time. You must have seen some incredible advances in the field of medicine.
I have, yes. I can only wonder how things will change with all this talk of ethericity. There's speculation it can be used to restore necrotic tissue and instantly heal broken bones, among other things. If you ask me, a good bloodletting will never go out of fashion.
Did you examine Madame Dupre after she reanimated?
Of course. Physically, she appeared to be in fine health aside from minor dehydration. I found no marks or bruising on her body. Mentally is a different story, however. She's remained in an unresponsive state ever since.
Do you have any opinions on what caused Madame Dupre to appear dead?
The most likely cause I can imagine is some sort of poison or toxin.
What leads you to believe Madame Dupre was poisoned?
The symptoms she experienced were consistent with prior cases of poisoning I've studied, and Didn't the young man arrested have ties to some kind of black magic cult? There have been reported cases of these practitioners using poisons to make people appear dead, then commanding them to do their bidding. I recall reading about a man in the West Indies who was given tetrodotoxin, that's the toxic secretion from a pufferfish, declared dead and buried. He appeared alive in his village some 20 years later.
Doesn't that seem a bit far-fetched to you, Doctor?
Facts are facts, Mr. Fordham. Surely someone in your line of work can appreciate that.
Those are all the questions I've got for now.
I hope I answered them adequately.
Oh, hello. Are you the new servant?
No, I'm Miles Fordham. I'm a private investigator looking into your mother's attempted murder.
How did you know I was her son? Oh, of course. You must have sensed it with your detective's intuition. I should have guessed by that giant head of yours.
Are you feeling all right, Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, I'm fine. Much better than when those pesky police officers were snooping around earlier. But I like you, Mr. Fordham. I can already tell you're not like them at all. Please, call me Andrew.
Yes, well, I'll have a look around and I may need to ask you some questions. Do you think you can handle that?
I can. In fact, I really look forward to it.
If the good doctor gave him a mild sedative, I'd hate to see what the stuff you take would have done to him. Dupre looks like she's holding on to that poor bastard for dear life. What a beautiful parrot. Must have cost the Dupre's a cool copper.